This again is the Women in the Workforce Interview Skills Zoom panel discussion. My name is Mary Jones, and I will introduce myself a little further in just a minute. So today we are looking at exploring some questions about interview skills and sort of how you get back into the workforce. So our panelists are Beth Kent, Career Development Specialist at UNT and the Hugh Brent Ryan College of Business, Tamara Miller, HR Training and Equity Manager at City of Louisville, and Dr. Emily White, PhD in English Rhetoric from Texas Women's University. We also want to thank our sponsors, Saffron and ServPro of Denton, as well as the United Way. Here's just a brief biography to tell a little bit more about who our panelists are today. Beth Kent said she's at UNT. She's a career coach, has a BBA in management from Michigan State, started at UNT in 2002, coordinating internships with the Internship and Co-op Office, which is where I met her. And she had an executive team lead position with Target. She's now in her 16th year in higher ed, 13 years with career and internship advising. Not just at UNT, but also she had a little bit of time down at UT Dallas. Tamara Miller. Tamara, can you wave? She has been with the City of Louisville since 2012. She is the city's HR Training and Equity Manager.
Oh, you went on mute.
That's odd. Okay. She graduated from Texas A&M Commerce with a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Training and Design. She has a Master of Science in Organization Learning and Technology. And she has also experience in teaching and working with students as an adjunct instructor for North Central Texas College for several years. Dr. Emily White came to Denton from Fort Worth, finished her education at Texas Women's University. She had a Bachelor of Science in '98, went off to Virginia Tech for a master's, and came back to Denton, getting her PhD from TWU in 2010. She describes herself as an enthusiastic Dentonite for over 23 years. Ran for city council at one point. She's currently serving as an advisor for a college prep company, helping high school students figure out how to navigate their way into college. And I am Dr. Mary C. Jones, the moderator. I just retired a couple of months ago. I was a professor of information systems at University of North Texas, but I have been a very active community volunteer for several years, particularly in homelessness initiatives. So with that out of the way, let's go down to look at what our format looks like for today. So I've introduced the panelists. We're going to next hear the panelists' views on 3 areas of interviewing, and then we will open it up for a question and answer period. So let me go back up. Oops. I'm trying to go back up. Well, hang on just a second. Let me get that slideshow back up. So we'll have our panelists up here while we're asking questions. So the first question will go to each panelist, and they'll have about 3 minutes to answer that question. Then there'll be another question, and we'll do the same thing. And then a third question with the same thing. Then we'll come back and open it up. So the first question that we have is, what are 2 key tips you would give about how to put your best foot forward in an interview? And before we answer that, Olivia, is the closed captioning on? I'm not seeing it on my screen. Olivia? Olivia, are you there?
I'm here, Mary. The Zoom settings are saying that if closed captioning is available, then it'll show up, but it will definitely show on the recording.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, so to repeat the question, what are 2 key tips you would give about how to put your best foot forward in an interview? And so let's start with you, Beth.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And again, Mary, thank you for inviting me today to participate in this. You know, I talk with students, you know, all day long about these things. And matter of fact, spent today already rescheduling appointments on these very topics. But we do have a lot of non-traditional students, you know, at UNT. So I feel like, you know, my advice and my coaching, you know, that I give with students can really go across all age groups, you know, those just starting in the workforce, those maybe re-entering the workforce, or maybe changing up you know, their career goals. And so maybe they've gone back to school and they're trying to retool and going to start again. And then I was also in a position, you know, years ago where it's like, I had 11 years of gap in my work history. So how was I going to, you know, survive an interview and be able to kind of explain what I've been doing? So, but I think the first thing, you know, when it comes to interviewing and putting your best foot forward, and recruiters will tell us this all the time, these students, you know, whoever's coming into that interview, they have to come prepared. And so that means really going in and doing your research on the company, you know, go out there on LinkedIn and, you know, start following them, try to connect with somebody out there, know the company that you're going in there and sitting in on, and what they do, and maybe what their mission and values are, what are their business goals and objectives. And so, and the other thing is to really dissect that job description. So you have to be able to translate, you know, what you've done in your work history, or your you know, personal accomplishments, personal or professional accomplishments, and be able to kind of weave those into your answers. So the key thing is really to go in and sell yourself. This is your time to shine. So, and then the other piece of that is you really trying to show the company that you did do your homework. You know, we often hear from these recruiters that I can tell in that first 2 or 3 minutes if that student has spent, or that candidate has spent any time researching the company, going through and dissecting that job, and actually knowing what, you know, what their skills are, what their accomplishments are, and how those can be relatable to potential performance, you know, for that job that they're applying to. So definitely trying to show them that your past accomplishments, the skills that you've had, how you've completed tasks, you know, how those relate to that position, you know, within their company. So aligning your skill set. And then that second key point is really the follow-up. That at the end of the interview is what I'm talking about, those follow-up questions. Very, very, very important that you ask these questions. It does help to build rapport with your interviewer. Again, it's showing them that you've done your homework. It kind of translates that you know, you have those interpersonal skills. You're trying to relate yourself to that company, to that, what is that ideal candidate profile that they're looking for. So asking great questions is definitely, you know, a plus. Having, you know, 3, 4, 5 questions toward the end of that interview that you're going to ask. And then, you know, and that final piece that you're going to do when you close out your interview with them is literally ask for the position. You know, show them and go back and relate how your skills translate and fit with their company profile, their objectives, the job description, and everything. So,
good. Tamara, let's go to you.
Hi, so good morning to everyone. Mary did such a great job of introducing me. I don't think I have to add too much more, but I do work with the city of Louisville. I'm the HR training and equity manager. So, you know, what can I say that will help you, and what's my experience in this, right? So besides sitting on so many interview panels, I feel like my interview skills development started when I was in high school. I used to participate in an actual FCCLA, if anyone is familiar with that Some of you may know it as consumer sciences, but we used to have competitions. And one of our competitions was that interviewing. So preparing high school students for interviews. So we had to study the art of interviewing. We had to study how to create a resume, how to dress for a resume, for an interview. And then we actually went to a competition where we had to sit on an actual interview. So that's where all of my knowledge first started. And then I got the opportunity to start with the city of Louisville in 2012, and then with part-time for North Central Texas College, actually teaching interview skills, resume building, business skills, and all of that. So I have a history, a long history of this, and just in conversation, talking with people. Tamara, what should I do? How do I, build my resume? How do I have a good interview? So for me, and I think Beth really nailed it with everything that she said, but the one part that I do want to mention when she talked about being prepared, because that was the first note that I actually made, is know the job that you're applying for, and make sure that you understand what your role and responsibilities will be. I can't tell you how many times we've interviewed people and they have no idea. They just said, this was the job posting. It looked like what I do now, so I figured I would take a shot at it, right? Don't ever sell yourself short. I've also had people in interviews that will tell us, even at the end of the interview, they're like, well, I might not be the best candidate, but I hope that you please don't sell yourself short. What Beth said was so true. At the end, that is your selling point. That is when you tell me that I am the person for this job. I've done this job before. I have aspirations of doing this job. Sell yourself, because those are the things that they're going to remember. And then the next thing that I will say, the last thing that I will say about if you're in an in-person interview, and even if it's virtual, make sure that you dress for the job that you want. I know I might be a little bit old-fashioned in that thinking. Some people will say, well, that doesn't matter. Anyone can do the job. Doesn't matter how they present themselves. But to me, it means that you took the time and the effort. And I'm not saying you have to put on a 3-piece suit or anything like that, but dress for that job that you want, because that shows that you did put forth the effort, that you felt as though this job is really important to me and I really want to make a good impression. So I'm going to do the best that I can on my end to show that. And that's probably the best way that you can show that, in my mind. Some people don't really think about that, but that is something that I look at. So those are probably the best couple of tips, just to add on to Beth, because like I said, she did a really good job of capturing everything. But just those few things that when you're walking into an interview, just to make sure that you're prepared.
Right, thank you. So now we're going to go to Emily, and one thing that did not come out in Emily's bio, but one reason we asked her on the panel, is she has just been through a successful job interview process. So this is fresh in her mind. So Emily, what are your 2 key tips?
All right, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This is fun, and it's nice to meet you, Beth and Tamara, and I appreciate being in your company this morning. Yes, I just recently, I'm like on the 5th version of myself at this point. There are choices that we weren't able to make recently that have been made for us. And one of the tips that I think Beth's tips and Tamara's tips are all wonderful, just to echo what they said. Number one, I think it's okay to be honest and say, this has been a weird 2 years and we're kind of reinventing ourselves right now. Although this has been a strange situation and at times a tragic situation, I think this is also an opportunity for us to see what we can do and what we're doing in the future. And so I think it's okay to say, during this time, I learned that I'm very technologically savvy in Zoom. I learned that I'm a good social media poster. I learned that I'm a pretty good accountant. I wasn't afraid to tackle algebra. I learned another language. I think it's okay to say, in this past 2 years or in this past experience that we've had together, I've learned that this is what I can do. And I'm interested in joining you and doing the things that we can do together. So I think being mindful of what's been happening in our culture and talking about it and being honest about it and saying, we've been through a strange time, but this is what I've learned about myself, and this is how I can help us grow. Number two, I really have been wanting a volunteer opportunity, and Mary just rolled up on me and asked me. I didn't have to do anything, but I think if you can, and when I speak with students during the day, this is what I tell them: see if you can volunteer. Maybe you don't have a lot of time to volunteer because maybe you're a single mom. See if you can volunteer at your child's school where everybody's off the clock and your children are with you. If money is a consideration and you are working several jobs to make ends meet and don't have enough time to volunteer, I think opening up a business can be a small scale opportunity that you can do, like doing Airbnb, or maybe capitalizing on some things that you can do to help out in your community if the time allows, or if thinking of ways that you can network and meet other people. I love to sit in job interviews and talk about where I volunteered and people that I've worked with, because I think that helps establish my credibility as a reliable worker, as someone who has good credibility in my community, and as someone who wants to serve my community. So my two things, I'm setting my timer so I don't ramble on, and I'm finished. But those two things.
Okay. Oh,
And I'm going to just kind of add on to that. I think, thinking about our audience here, maybe what some of us have gone through in the past, if you feel like, oh, I don't have any work experience, or I don't have anything to put on a resume, well, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but your volunteer work, your ability to handle multiple things in the day when you're trying to run kids here, manage a household, maybe you are going to be doing some volunteer work. Those are all really important skills and things that you can bring to the table about how you've managed to get through the pandemic, or maybe it was even way before that, when you've been in a situation where you just don't have the opportunity to work, but you're still managing 100 things a day. So kind of dissect that, and what are the skills that you've gotten out of that? Conflict management, you're able to handle stress in these kind of situations. So those are also good talking points, in an interview.
okay. So let's move on to our next question, which is one tip for putting your best foot forward in a virtual interview. Tamara, let's start with you.
So when it comes to virtual interviews, every company has a different way that they approach it. So I'm going to tell you about two different approaches, but my answer is still going to be one. So one is some companies will do virtual interviews where they will send out a link, and they will have you to answer questions. They will present a question and they'll say, okay, record yourself answering this question. And it gives you about 2 to 3 minutes to do that in, and it'll give you about 2 or 3 tries, because of course we're going to fail at it the first time. What I will tell you is to make sure that you read the instructions beforehand. We have seen that fail in the past, to where someone will not read the instructions and they'll use their 2 or 3 times, and now whatever you have is what's been submitted. So be sure to make sure that you read those instructions. The other virtual interview that a lot of you have probably seen is similar to what we're doing right now. Someone will use, Teams or Zoom, Google Meet, and they'll say, hey, jump on this call. We're going to ask you a few interview questions. So it's kind of like being in person. The only thing I will say is that you are now in control of the environment. You're not walking into their environment. So be sure that when you have something like that going on, one, make sure you have a blank background, or something like a few of us are using like filters, things like that, and make sure that there's no distractions around you. I will tell you that we've had virtual interviews where people's pets will run across the screen, or we may hear TVs in the background, different things like that. So make sure that you are in a space to where you don't have any distractions going on, and that will definitely help you. I know today I'm probably not in the best, I would say, if I were to have a virtual interview, because me and my husband are both at home today because of our job. So he's in the background cooking and making us lunch while I'm here talking with you.
Nice.
So I would say make make sure to eliminate all distractions. Don't be like me, like I am today. So,
All right, thank you. Emily, what's your one tip for virtual interviews?
I would echo what Tamara said. I would also try to remember to stay engaged, make sure that you're paying attention. I nod and I try to smile so that people know that I'm paying attention and I'm not diverted. Also, I was supposed to be at work today, but we're all getting a snow day. I'm actually house sitting for my friends and they work at home. So they've loaned me their hand. I'm not at my friend's house. I got a slide back here. So I thought, well, I'm going to make this fun. So like Tamara says, you know, mindful of audience, I smile, I nod, I remain engaged. I want people to know that I'm paying attention. As an educator, listening to all my friends be frustrated about, you know, having online class with students, knowing that people are listening to me and staying engaged is important. And so, you know, I try to do that with the slide behind me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Beth?
Yes, and then just obviously my notes kind of mimicked what both Tamara and Emily has already said, but one thing too I want to bring up, a lot of it is your body language and just that, you know, showing that you're engaged. It's really hard for, you know, a recruiter sitting on the other end of a screen, you know, to see what, you know, what's going on down here, you know, or, you know, just your body language overall, it's hard for them. So having that good eye contact all the time, look at the actual camera, maybe not if you've got their pictures over here, you know, so just make sure you're looking at the camera, your body language. And then also the other piece of that is actually dress like you're going to an in-person interview. So keep the professional dress, as much of a professional attire, you know, I would say from head to toe, you know, don't get caught in that situation or whatever, you know, these funny commercials that we've seen, you know, where they're in their sweatpants. But I think that also helps you to stay focused and realize, okay, you know, I'm going to act just like I am in an in-person interview. I'm going to, you know, I talk with my hands a lot, but, you know, the eye contact, the body language, not a lot of fidgeting. And then just to kind of touch too on the technology side of this, I don't know how many times I've had students say, you know, well, I'm having trouble getting into this interview. It's a virtual interview. Well, have you checked, do you actually have that app on your laptop? You know, should not be using your phone to do virtual interviews, but if you have the opportunity to, if you have a laptop, make sure you have the correct application that you're trying to log into. And even for some of us, maybe we don't have that, you know, make sure you have that strong internet connection. If you're in a community, I'm sure our local libraries have these quiet rooms, you know, you could probably check that out to see where could I go where I know I can keep that, you know, good tech, that Wi-Fi or internet connection so that I can actually get through this interview. So there are a lot of our services offered in the community, places that you can go for that if you don't have something reliable at home.
All right.
Yeah, so that's my addition to that.
All right, thank you. So our last question before we open it up is, what are your top 3 tips for building a resume? And Emily, we'll start with you.
Yes, ma'am. Number 1, I like to keep my resume, and mine's called a curriculum vitae, a duplex 1 page. If I listed everything I've done from working at Uncle Julio's to going to Virginia Tech, it would be 9 pages long. All the classes that I've taught, I try to keep it at 1 front and back page. That's me. Also, I'm just going to be bold. As an experiment, I don't put a lot of dates in my resume. I put the dates that I got my college degrees, but I don't put a lot of dates in there because I just don't. So maybe it's an experiment. That's just kind of a bold statement to not let people know, let them guess how old you are. I don't know, maybe. Number 3, at the same time, don't sell yourself short with your skills. Like Beth was saying earlier, you know, I know how to manage people. I'm a good accountant. I'm good with space. So social media expert, you know, that's me. I can do that all day long. Be mindful of all the things that you can do and don't sell yourself short on what you can do. It's valuable.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Beth.
Okay, so I agree that keeping it to 1 page, you know, front and back, if you do have that much of a work history or just the front, And like I said work history, but even if that history is more of your volunteer work, you know, you're managing family and household and all that. So one page, keeping it a plain format too, unless you're going to an in-person networking event. You know, don't use graphics, don't use columns, don't use text boxes. Most companies today, you're applying for a position, there might be 300 applicants or more. So more than likely, these companies are using an applicant tracking system. They're going to take that database of resumes and they're going to scan, that system is going to scan and rank them. If you've got columns, if you've got graphics, it's just going to really create a lot of these parsing errors on your resume. Chances are it's just going to kick it out of the system. So a plain Word doc, one-page resume, I think is critical. And then within that resume, making sure that, you know, you don't necessarily have to list every little thing that you did on a job, but where did you make an impact? What did you do that was above and beyond? What were your accomplishments, you know, on that job or in that situation you were in? Show them again how your skills that you used on that job can translate into the job that you're applying to. So rule of thumb is tailor the whole resume to kind of that industry or that kind of a job that you're applying to. Go through and look at 5 or 6 jobs you're going to apply to. Where do you consistently, what are the consistent skills you see across all of them? Make sure that you've got that on your resume and you are giving some good examples or scenarios of where you've used that skill. And then secondly, you can go back and actually customize your resume. So again, when your resume is being scanned by an ATS system, it's more about the match rate before it even gets to a human. So the computer is going to say, this person's an 82% match rate with the things skills that I'm looking for. So having the actual company name and the actual job title in your, like a professional profile statement or objective statement, whatever you have at the top of your resume, is another way that you can actually go in and just customize that to the position. You know, and I know I've mentioned before, if you are kind of re-entering the workforce or you just don't have a lot of work history, grab, you know, those volunteer experiences you've had. If you have kids, you know, what did you do all through them growing up? You know, I used to lead the award ceremony for LISD high schools. I did that for several years in a row. So I used that experience about managing multiple teams, you know, across 3 different schools to organize this event, you know, when I went back into the workforce. And so there's a lot of good skills that can be gotten out of your volunteer work or things that you've done, you know, outside the home. So yeah, I guess that was my 3 tips.
All right, Tamara?
All right, so I'm going to take it a step back on my first tip that I have is talking about your cover letter. So, and let me tell you why this is so important, because cover letter is just a good attention getter is kind of, I'd probably say the simplest terms. And it's also important that that cover letter is correct. The reason why I say that is that we had a job at one point in time that opened up, and you know, I work for the city, and so one of the things was a person had put the wrong city name on the actual cover letter because this city had a similar position open that we had, so they hadn't taken the time to replace it. They were just continuing to apply to cities with that same name, so that's a no-go for me from the beginning. But not to say that's gonna, it won't always hinder you from moving forward, but that is something that I pay attention to. Now, again, that's just because I told you, my mind goes back to high school. I was interview skills. I learned the art of it. So make sure that you take the time to replace that out on your cover letter. And I agree with Beth about making sure that your skills match up with the position that you are applying for. And there are times when you will read something in that job description and you go, oh yeah, I've got that. So you'll just submit your resume as is. Well, make sure that it shows that you have whatever it was that you wanted to spotlight. Make sure you make it connect for them, because I will tell you, like Beth said, we're going to get 300 applications for this one job. So on the recruiting side, we are not going to go through and make it fit for us. You have to make it fit. And so make sure you have that. Make sure you have space in your resume. I do agree, the 1 page, 2 pages if you have a lot of experience or a lot of education, but make sure you have space in those pages for readability purposes. I love that you were, I love that you have computer skills and that you are a good problem solver. I love all of that, but make sure that I can read that easily as I'm reading through your resume. Try not to stack things on top of each other. And then probably one of the big things too, I don't think I heard anyone say this, but make sure that when you are putting your job history on your resume, make sure that that job history matches what you put on your application. I don't know how many times people will come and they will say, well, I don't understand how I didn't get an interview, or how did you, not pick me? I have all the skills, all of this. So in working for a city our size, we do have a lot of internal candidates, so they feel comfortable coming to us to talk about it. And one thing that we found is that, sure, they would put it on their application, but they would never upload their resume with the same information. So we're not seeing you, it's not an apples to apples comparison. So when I look at your application, it should be the same thing that's on your resume. They should match, so that it doesn't matter if I'm a recruiter that only looks at applications, that's fine because I have it all on there. Or if I am a hiring manager that only looks at resumes, then it's all on there. Make sure you have it on both. That's not the fault of the person hiring. That's on us to make sure we give them that information. Just make their job a little bit easier.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering those questions. So let's open it up and see if we have questions from anyone else.
So I have a question. Hi everyone.
Hi.
So I do, talking about the applications, so this past year, I was actually looking for a new job and having to do an application, which I haven't done in 20 something years. And it is totally different than it used to be. So when you all are talking about, submitting and going through this process of, it's not a real person who's looking at it. So how do you pick the keywords from the job descriptions to put into, your resume so that it is flagged as, 80-something% or whatever? How do you know what keywords to really choose when you're looking at the job description? Are there some pointers on things that we need to look for to put into a resume?
Yeah, and I'm sure we're all going to agree on this. Actually, just going through the job description, I actually recommend, if you can print those job descriptions, take a highlighter under the skills and qualifications needed, exceptional time management or self-management, good verbal communication, good written communication. So those are all, pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, a lot of times in the job description, they're just going to talk about the company, what they do, what their work culture is like. So you can kind of pick up some things in there too. Maybe it's a fast-paced work environment, or it's a really deadline-driven work environment, or project management focused. So project focused. So, those are also some things that you can kind of pull out of that job description and then relate that to, okay, what have I done that really shows my exceptional communication abilities? And maybe maybe where you led a team, at your previous job, or maybe it's just problem solving abilities. So just trying to write bullet points, that are examples of those key things. So really going through, and I say it's dissecting the actual job description too.
I'd like to echo Beth on that. I have been known to cut and paste the job description and highlight it and slap some quotes around it and say, hi, I have written my cover letter as a response to the job description using the exact words and saying, and I make it a cause and effect. This is why I'm perfect for this job. This is how I can use it. And this is how we can grow together. I always try to think about the future. What is my applicable skill that's going to make me attractive to this group? And how can I fit myself in here? So yes.
Does that
And
kind of answer your question, Micah?
Yes, I have another
Tamara,
question
did-
too.
Oh, hang on a second.
Go
Tamara,
ahead.
did you have something you wanted
yeah,
to add?
just one quick thing about that, and I hope this will be helpful. So I know for us, for job descriptions that we have at the city, we have what is called, I hope I'm saying this correct, basic qualifications and preferred qualifications. So make sure that for sure, if you have any of the preferred qualifications, that you highlight those somewhere in your resume, because those preferred qualifications are the ones that they're going to go for always first, because they're going to say, okay, this person they come fully equipped versus someone who may just have the basic qualifications. We have to train that person in some of these areas. So make sure that if you do see a job description that is that way, that you, if you have the preferred, you always want to try to make sure to highlight those.
And that could be that maybe they want you have, an intermediate or expert level or whatever in a certain software program, Excel or whatever, So, and then that being said, I don't think we've mentioned this anywhere. You can use platforms like LinkedIn, Google, where you can actually go on and do some upskilling and do some of these little modules and get some certificates. They might not be full-blown certifications, but, if there's some things like even on LinkedIn, you could go in and do what is customer service? How do I give the best customer service, or working in a team? So there's things that you can do to highlight on your resume to show that you've kind of taken some time to learn, do some training kind of outside of, either a work environment or a school environment. So that you can add to your resume.
Micah, you had another question?
I do. So I realized, when I was applying for some jobs, that some of them want you to, when you upload your resume, then they want you to answer qualifying questions.
Right.
So can you guys talk about that a little bit, about when those questions pop up and they want you to answer all these questions? Because I'm sure that kicks people out too, if you're not answering them the way that they want you to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to talk about this from the city perspective, because we go through the same application process to make it fair and unbiased for all people that are applying, right? So those qualifying questions, yes, you are correct, they can kick you out. But what we do is we ask those questions ahead of time. So a lot of companies will do this. They will put what's called minimum qualifications, and those minimum quals you have to meet, or your resume goes nowhere. And I'm not saying that it's not something that you shouldn't pursue, but if you look at the questions and you go, okay, I don't meet this, or I am short of whatever it might be, unfortunately, the answer is you probably shouldn't apply for that job. Now, I know for some of us, we're like, oh, but I'm so close, or I'm, I'm almost there, or whatever the case may be. Most recruiters are going to look at that black and white, right? It's like, do you have 4 years of experience working in this program, or do you not? So those minimum qualification questions are very important. And it's very important that when you're looking at jobs, that you match yourself to that job, whatever the case may be. Because I have yet to see anyone go into it and say, oh, well, I've got, 2 years in this program instead of 4. And someone said, okay, well, we're just gonna let them through, right? Because it would be unfair on a lot of levels, because if you get in and then someone who has the 4 years doesn't get in, well, then now there's bias in the system. So with that being said, yes, you do have to meet those minimum quals, or it really doesn't go anywhere. So you are correct in saying that.
I recently went through that experience, Micah, as well. I was in Mexico, living in Mexico, and I was applying for a job to teach English online. And I had to make a brief video, and I made it to the next level. And then all of a sudden I was on camera and they said, Emily, Juan wants to know what a rhetorical question is. Can you explain that to him in Spanish? And I was like, no, I can't. But, you know, I just pivoted. And when I left the questions, I thought that I blew it, but I didn't blow it. They just put me in this class teacher instead of being a teacher in this class. So I was kind of on the spot, and I had to be honest and say, I'm not qualified to do this, but I pivoted and I said, but I'm qualified to do that. And then I was hired. So it was kind of unnerving, but thankfully I met the requirements. I think we have a hand up.
Me.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
If you have a question, hi, welcome.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. My name's Nikisha. I kind of wanted to piggyback on the last thing that you mentioned, Tamara, when you were speaking on, like, let's say if the position requires like 4 years experience and, you know, you have 2, is there a way that you could maybe make reference to if you had work experience that's 2 years, but 2 years of education or volunteerism? Can you swing it that way to kind of equal for some kind of way?
So I love that you asked this question, because I was hoping that I would be able to kind of clear that up, because I know it is kind of harsh to say. It's just like, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But yes, I absolutely. So I'm just gonna piggyback from something that I did a long time ago. So when I was first entering the workforce, I was becoming an admin. So I had taken all the admin professional courses. I got a certificate in it. I had done volunteer work. I know that Emily had mentioned about volunteer work. I had done all these things, right? But did I have the 4 years of experience in an actual, you know, office doing this full time, 40 hours a week? No, I did not. I had spent 2 years just preparing myself for this, doing all the volunteer work as an admin, getting my education, all of that. And then I'd spent 2 years actually in the job in this office, right? So what I did was exactly that. I leveraged my volunteer experience that I had. And then that's how I got through to the next level of that, to make up my, whatever it was, the year that I was lacking in, you know, in full-time experience, is that I had been volunteering for almost, you know, 3 or 4 years, doing the same job that they were wanting me to do. So absolutely, I would say if you can leverage any of that, and I tell people, you piece together that time. Sometimes you go, I don't really know if I have quite a year. You go back and you look at the time that you spent. Did you do anything part-time? Did you do any volunteer? Were you in school? Did you do anything for an organization at your school that's the same job that you're trying to do now? You count every month, every day, until if you know for sure, hey, I have this much experience. And then that's how you have to sell it. I mean, I had to do that in that interview, was to say, I've been doing this job for 4 years and not being paid for it, but I do exactly what you are requiring. And so that helped me. I got that job because of that. Because I had to go in and actually piece my years of experience together. So absolutely, I would say yes.
Okay. And if I could ask one more question, I know from Ms. Kent, I heard you also mention that it's not really suggested to use a lot of graphics and things like that with resumes recently. One of the other positions I wanted to go into is something virtual. So in my head, I was thinking with a virtual position and you're not actually seeing the person every day, then maybe it'd be a good idea to put a photo of yourself on the resume. I had also saw another template that wasn't too cartoony with bubbles, but had a little bit of color to it. I don't know. In my head, I'm trying to make the biggest impact, not seem too animated, but just, you know what I mean? Keep it professional, but also kind of, you know, get their attention at the same time. Could I swing it that way, you think? And maybe still have a good professional effect and let them still feel like they know me a little bit more?
Yeah, so I still believe that the resume should be plain, you know, still no graphics or anything like that on there. You do have the opportunity though on you using your LinkedIn, you know, if you hopefully have a LinkedIn profile, that's where you have a picture. That's where you can give your LinkedIn profile can have so much more information there about you than what you have on your resume.
Okay.
The resume is really just the introduction of you. And so we always suggest no pictures on there. Every line on a resume is valuable real estate. So everything that you have on there should be pertinent to the actual job. And you should have your LinkedIn URL on a resume. So, and making that clickable so that if it is emailed to somebody, they can actually click that and open up and see your profile. You know, I say that, but that's when you're applying online. You can certainly have these things on a resume. I still don't suggest a picture on a resume, but you could do some graphics, have borders, do some color if you want, if you're physically going to a networking event. Where you're handing somebody a resume, then yes. If you're going, maybe it's a creative position, you know, if you're trying to get into a marketing type of a job, or, you know, maybe your artwork or your logos or graphics or whatever you're doing, you know, can be, maybe you have an online portfolio of those things. So then a link on your resume to that, or absolutely having that stuff on your LinkedIn. So kind of using, I tell, you know, my students, use LinkedIn as like a repository for everything about you. But then the resume, when you go to apply, should, especially in the online platforms, you know, just be plain, because chances are it's not a human that's reading it the first time around. Okay.
Thank you.
Questions? Something that I was telling someone that we were doing this panel today, and they were talking about, you know, they thought that was a good idea because they had just recently been through the job search and how different it was than 20 years ago. And one thing that she said was, oh, the group interviews are terrifying. And
Yeah.
so would anyone want to just touch on group interviews and kind of what people are looking for in group interviews, how to stand out in that?
You know, I have, you know, my responses, you know, to as far as group interviews is what I hear from students. I personally have not been in a group interview. Tomorrow, I don't know if the city, if you guys do that, but the one thing I will say about these group interviews is a lot of times you're in a room before the interview starts, you're all together. It's all about being very courteous, very professional with everybody else that you know is going in, you know, to that interview. You're a panel interview where maybe you have 3 different people interviewing you, or sometimes it's a group interview is where you are among 3 or 4 others that are going in and 1 or 2 people are interviewing you. So depending on the situation, all in all, it's still a matter of being professional, courteous, respectful of everybody that's in the room, you know, supporting. If it's multiple candidates in there, you're still supporting each other. You know, being respectful of everybody's time in a group interview like that. So
If I may chime in on that, my favorite word is always succinct. I can talk all day and I've never met a stranger, and I can ramble on all day long about stuff. But when I'm in a group interview, I realize that everybody may want to ask me a question, and we want to make sure that we have time to do that. So when I'm asked a question, I always answer the question and I try to give a yes or no answer, and then I elaborate on that. And then if I can feel it out, I'll add one more elaboration and then allow for someone else to ask me a question. So I try to be mindful of the time in there and be very conscious of how I'm answering the questions. Are you from Texas? Yes. I was born and raised in Fort Worth. I got to Denton as quickly as I could, you know, and then move on to the next thing so that everybody has time to ask their questions. Succinct is my favorite word in a group interview.
Hi, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Joyce. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm doing great. How are you all? Go ahead,
Good.
Tamara, finish your comment.
No, just quickly. So no, we don't do, normally we don't do group interviews at the city, but I have had that experience before. One of the things I will say is absolutely what Emily said, because there are going to be other people who need to answer, but you have to make sure that you stand out still. Like she said, you know, I'm just going to answer the question and then I'm going to do my one elaboration, because that's going to be the thing that sticks in their mind. And they're going to be looking more so at your presentation of how you are and how you stand out, and also how you interact with the other people in that room. Are you very stoic and just, I'm focused on my own thing, I don't want to look at anyone, I don't want to talk to anyone? Are you the person that shows, hey, I'm a team player? I'm like, if that person answers like, okay, that's good, I like that. Or you piggyback off someone else's answer to say, well, when Susan answered that question, I thought that was really good, and let me tag on to that. So things like that to make yourself stand out amongst the group. And then I'm going to kick it over to Joyce because she had a question.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So going back to, first of all, hi, everyone. And you ladies are doing an absolutely fabulous job. So much information. Love, love, love this. So my name is Joyce Brown, and I'm actually working with the mentoring group, and I'm part of Women's United and with United Way. But anyway, so I have a question on the virtual interviews. So I know you all said that even if it's a virtual interview, you still need to carry yourself professionally, you still need to dress professional and all of that. However, I was talking to a young lady a couple of months ago, and she had a virtual interview and she didn't turn her video on. She said the video, she had her video off the whole time. I was horrified when she said that. But she said she went through the interview and it was for a professional job. She's educated, and she got the job. But still, I think that that's an anomaly. I think that at any time you're doing an interview virtual, that camera needs to be on. So I just wanted to kind of get your opinion about that to see what you thought.
And we are coming up on our last couple of minutes. We want to be mindful of our time. So if we can just have, that's a good one to end on, I think, if we can just have a quick response.
Yeah, I think absolutely you have to have your video, your camera on. I think that goes back to that respect. You know, they want, you have to treat it like an in-person interview. So yes, you need to have your camera on.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I just think that maybe that needs to just be, you know, as you all go to the next phase, that just needs to be clarified. Say, hey, video is not an option. You need to have that video on every time you have a virtual interview. Because like I said, I was kind of horrified when she said she didn't. I was like, how could you not? But anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I put earlier in the chat was, if for some reason your video or something is just not working, have a backup device. Always have a backup device. If it comes down to it and you have to do it on your cell phone, that's fine. That shouldn't be your number one option, but always have that so that you can have that camera capability. They're able to see you for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we have come up to 1 minute before 12, so we want to be mindful of time. Thank you all for attending. Thank you very much, the panelists. This has been a great discussion today. This is part of, as Joyce mentioned, part of a Mentoring Women Who Are Getting Back into the Workforce program. This was our first program, our first step in this. And so I'm real pleased at how well this has gone today. A lot of good information out there. We will be getting more information out to you about other things that we're planning. Olivia will be helping us get that posted in various places. So stay tuned. There is certainly more to come. Thank you all.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Y'all have a good day.
Nice to meet
Thank y'all so
everybody.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Today.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.